on evolution and specifically looking at the introduction to what evolution is. So let's get started on our next video. So if we look at all these different types of animals, why do these animals look this way? Well, the other question that we can ask from this is, how does this happen? So we have this fish with a very clear looking forehead here. We have giraffes with these extremely large necks. And then in this picture here, we have this mole with a star-faced nostril. So why do animals look like this? How does this happen? And what is evolution? We see all these animals on the planet and we observe them interacting with their environment, but we don't really understand yet how this goes through and occurs. And evolution is really the study of how this all happened over long periods of time. So what is evolution? Well, evolution is the process by which different kinds of living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms during the history of Earth. And Charles Darwin is one of the most famous scientists in all of history, and he came up with this theory of evolution. Now, evolution is something that's almost intuitive. We can think of evolution when we talk about cars. If we talk about cars, well, we had these cars in the early 1900s, and these cars slowly over time and over a period of 100 years evolved in these very complex machines that we go through and drive today. So evolution doesn't just happen with animals, it's also going to happen within our everyday lives in mechanics, society, and the course of human history. So let's talk about the evolution of Darwin's theory here. So it took Darwin over 20 years to go through and write this Origin of Species. And this is the book where he really went through and categorized and planted and solidified the foundation for the theory of evolution. If we look at the image here, we can see the actual print of the Origin of Species here. Remember, all we're going through and talking about is the process by which different kinds of organisms are developed and diversifying over time. So Charles Darwin spent a lot of time going through observing. We'll look at this in another video, but really observing different organisms all over the globe. And he realized that over time, dependent upon their environments and dependent upon how much time they were given, they went through and diversified and went through and adapted to those environments. And evolution is that process and that mechanism that we're going through and really looking at when we go through and study this scientific process. So let's really delve into the nitty-gritty of what evolution is. Evolution is going to be, and it's going to state, that there is a change in heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. So if we look at this, it's going to consist of two main ideas. The first main idea is going to be that evolution is going to occur. And in other words, what we're saying here is organisms are going to change over time, and life on Earth has changed as descendants have diverged from their common ancestors. The other thing that we have to think about here, and the other idea, is the process of natural selection. And natural selection is the process that results in living things with beneficial traits that are going to allow these organisms to produce more offspring compared to other organisms. This is going to result in the changes in traits in populations and these organisms over time. Now, how do we know that this occurred? Well, we're going to use evidence. We're going to look at a lot of evidence that goes through and explains how evolution occurred. And evidence is really the available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. So detectives are going to use evidence to solve a crime. And if a crime has occurred, the way that it's presented in a court of law is the evidence is presented to the jury, and the jury makes a decision. And we use evidence to basically prove the existence of dinosaurs. How do I know dinosaurs have existed? Well, based on evidence, based on fossils that we've gone through and discovered in geological layers of rock, we can go through and prove that dinosaurs have existed because the remains of their bodies exist. And that is evidence that will go through and categorize and prove that dinosaurs once roamed the earth. So when we look at this, we can think about the evidence for evolution as a toolkit. So if we look at our evolutionary toolkit, well, it's going to consist of a few parts here. The first evidence is what we just went through and talked about. That's the fossil record. We are also going to have developmental evidence when we look at embryos. There's also going to be evidence from other research that other people have done other than Darwin. We also have plate tectonics and continental drift. If we go a little bit further, we can go and delve into species and speciation. We can also look at biochemistry and the molecular clock of organisms. We can also look at the morphology of organisms. And then lastly, we can look at evolution from common descent. So all of these categories are going to create a toolkit which allow us to create evidence to show that evolution has occurred. All right, so did you guys learn? Well, did you learn a couple of things? Were you introduced to the idea of evolution and understand fundamentally what it is? Our second thing here is, do you understand what evolution is and who discovered it? Did you guys go and show how it occurred? Do we understand evidence and how evolution has occurred? And then do we understand our evolutionary toolkit and that concept map so when we get into further videos, we understand this a little bit better? This is going to be the end of the video. I will see you all in class tomorrow.